All right, welcome everybody to the final episode of Draft on Tap this year. Of course, Adam Aniba's been here with me all year. Adam, this has been a ton of fun. 2 seasons in the book, maybe the craziest we've had so far. We'll go through what I feel like looks like the final 32. Our guest today to help us take a look at it is Justin Melo from the Draft Network. Justin, how are you? Appreciate you doing this.
Doing well, Doug. Appreciate you for having me on.
I enjoy your content. I share it frequently, and I know you guys have been grinding. How long of a break do you take once the draft's over, Justin? Do you get a break to exhale and think about it for a second?
Well, it's crazy. So this year, I set a new personal high. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I do like an interview series on the draftnetwork.com where I interview the players. It looks like we're going to end at 205 interviews this year. So I've been exceptionally busy from January to now. My boss joked to me the other day. He goes, "You're going to still be sending me interviews in May for crying out loud. Like, the draft's at the end of April, right? I'm sending them 3-4 a day. Like the series has had an overwhelming amount of success this year. I'm very thankful, very blessed. Saturday will be my busiest day of the year. As busy as I've been, Saturday is the one day where it feels like the stress always hits me hard because I'll be breaking a lot of UDFA news. So I'll be working the phone all day long Saturday. It's a crazy day. Sunday will kind of be picking up the pieces. It'll be, a little bit more laid back. And then Monday and Tuesday, I am off on Monday and Tuesday. So planning to put the phone away, maybe go get a nice meal, maybe take a nap. We'll see how the day goes.
What do you think that meal is going to look like, Justin?
I'm thinking barbecue. You know what I mean? Like I'm feeling some burnt ends, some brisket, some mac and cheese, cornbread to go with it. That's the way I'm leaning right now. But I'm a foodie. Like my wife, she thinks I'm nuts. Like I like to plan our restaurant visits like a week or two in advance. It's like I love eating. So wherever we're going, I could do it. I'm thinking Italian. We'll see. But barbecue is probably in the lead right now.
I love that. And you're in Nashville, is that right?
I am not. So I'm probably going to shock you if you didn't know this. I'm in Toronto, Canada.
Oh, wow.
Okay, nice. I did not know that.
I've actually heard they got some good barbecue up there, actually.
You know what? It's underrated. Like as a guy that's been to Nashville and knows what Southern barbecue looks like, we've done a really good job sort of mimicking it out here. Like I would say in the last year, I've probably been to 6 or 7 places that you could have convinced me were like in Alabama or Texas.
Oh, yeah. They were featured on Food Network. Definitely, man. I'm all about that too, bro.
205 interviews. Was there one that surprised you more than other?
I get asked this every year, and there were a lot of good ones. It's a cheesy answer, but I really mean it. There was not a single one where I hung up the phone saying that was terrible, that was a waste of my time. That has so rarely happened to me throughout the years, in truth. Some ones that stuck out to me this year, like Terrion Arnold from Alabama, might be my highest drafted player potentially. I thought was outstanding. Just I just put myself in the shoes of running an organization, and I just walked away going, God, I want this guy on my team so bad. Like, what a leader, what an outstanding human being. Just impressed the heck out of me. I got to tell some pretty good stories near the end of it, too. Guys from up the neck of my woods. Maybe I'm a little biased, but Gio Manu, if you haven't heard of this kid, the O tackle from the University of British Columbia up here in Canada, 6'7", 353 pounds, ran a 4.96 at Pro Day. I mean, at 300, that's a moving refrigerator. He had 13 top 30 pre-draft visits. And that interview went live this morning. The crazier part of this story, in my opinion, I got one publishing tomorrow with his offensive tackle partner, Theo Benedict, who's also probably going to get drafted. I mean, we might see 2 offensive tackles from the same Canadian university who never attended a college football program in the States get drafted. I mean, that is completely... Benedict, by the way, there was more than 20 NFL teams at their pro day up in British Columbia, Vancouver, Canada. So those stories were a lot of fun to tell. I mean, I could go on and on. Johnny Newton was a fun one. Troy Fatanu from Washington, I had a great time with. Troy Franklin from Oregon. Spencer Rattler, the QB. We told a lot. Chris Braswell from Alabama. We told a lot of great stories this year.
It's interesting, too, because on the show, we interview a ton of people. There is a big difference between interviewing media types, insider types, And then to the players, it can be a challenge because it is a different conversation. What do you go into those conversations trying to get?
I try to make the interview series something that appeals to more than just your average football fan. My content, I admit it is what it is. It's for a hardcore audience. Like, I want it to be for the footballing nerd for the most part. So, like, when I'm talking to an offensive lineman, I ask him, hey, gap down, power, downhill, or zone based? What do you prefer running? Inside zone, outside zone, gap, power? What was your, and if they want to give me the answer, oh, I can do both, I'll follow up and say, well, what was your favorite play to run in the playbook this year? Give me one you thought you had a lot of success with. If I'm interviewing a corner, we're talking about, again, press man versus zone. We're talking approaching bigger corners versus smaller corners. We're talking footwork, jamming at the line, techniques. If I'm receivers, of course, favorite routes to run, things of that nature. So my goal, and I think it works well. At the end of the day, when these guys get drafted, I'll be tweeting out the interviews all weekend long as the players are being drafted. Commanders fans, here's a new defensive end you drafted, yada, yada. The goal is for Commanders fans to then go read that interview and say, okay, wow, this guy really likes playing in a 3-4 base defense, or he really likes this, and his go-to pass rushing move is a club rip or a swim or whatever. I want you to feel educated on the player that you're getting, and I want you to say, okay, this is how he fits our team. Even though I'm having these conversations before we know where he's being drafted to, the goal is for the fans of that fan base to eventually say, okay, this is the type of player we're getting. Maybe even giving you insight. This is why we took him. We run a zone-based system. He was a running back that played in a zone-based offense, or he loves executing that. So it's sort of for the football nerd, and it's done well for me over the past decade or so.
I love it. Like I said, the work is incredible, and I dig it. Let's see. I put together this final first round mock. I sent it off to Huddle Report. There's no changing it now, so we'll see how it works. You guys tell me what you think.
That's a rookie move, Doug. I'm submitting mine at 10:45 tonight. I'm waiting just in case. Anything.
I should have waited. You're right. Rookie mistakes. I'll be learning. I'll be waiting next year. I think it's safe to have Caleb Williams going one. It sounds like they've already been installing the offense. More importantly, Justin, do you have him as your number one quarterback, whether he goes first or not?
I've got Caleb Williams as my top-ranked quarterback. Absolutely. It's been that way for me for a very long time. I haven't seen anything to change my mind.
I had originally had Drake May at 2, and I have been peer pressured into swapping that. So I have resigned to the idea. Not that I care one way or the other, really, I don't. I think it will be Jaden Daniels at 2. Adam, you kind of get that vibe too.
I guess, like I keep saying, I don't think you can really go wrong with both, but it's the cliche that, I think you're just going to have to be more patient with May. There's going to be, more time, more things worked out with his fundamentals. Cause I think Jaden Daniels it's just an experience thing. And, he's absolutely explosive. So I think it would just be more of a surprise because we don't really know what kind of system Kingsbury is going to run, because they're merging, minds in Washington right now with bringing in Lynn and everybody else. So I think this offense is not going to be what we're expecting. So, I just going out on my hunch, not listening to what anyone says, because, I love TDN. TDN is why I got into this. I really don't read much other stuff. I don't read the ESPN. I'll watch some NFL Network stuff. So I try to keep my opinion focused on my reports. But, I just think, Daniels is the one. Yeah, it just makes all the sense to me.
When Daniel Jeremiah said in his media junket that Drake May was an Adam Peters type guy, I really thought, man, but there just feels like there's too much smoke at this point, Justin. Is that where you're at now?
Yeah, I'm mocking Jaden Daniels at number 2. It just feels like there's way too much smoke, like you said. And maybe I'm silly, but I'm sure you guys caught it. Like when Chip Kelly Chip Kelly, excuse me, Brian Kelly.
I did the same thing.
LSU head coach, I meant to say, had the Freudian slip, if you will, at Pro Day where he said something along the lines of Jaden Daniels, he's going to be great in Washington. Like, yeah. I felt like he knew something, right? It didn't feel like he was just, because you could tell like the look on his face, like, oh crap, I probably shouldn't have said that. But I put a little stock into that. But besides, there's been a million examples of it, right, where it seems to be written almost in stone that it's going to be Jaden Daniels. Now, I'll be honest with you. I don't want to disappoint your viewers or listeners here. I personally have Drake May as my number 2 ranked quarterback, like based on pure talent alone. He is my preferred prospect in that spot. But I understand how they could have arrived at Jaden Daniels. I mean, I don't know that we've ever seen a college football player get better the way he did, right? Like in terms of the improvement trajectory, like if you would have told me a couple years ago that kid at Arizona State was going to turn into this, I don't think any of us would have believed it, right? Like not in a million years. So kudos to him. I thought he was the deserved Heisman Trophy winner. What an explosive season he had. The deep ball accuracy, I thought he was one of the best deep ball throwers in all of college football. Him and Michael Penix, I think, sort of stood alone on that mountaintop in terms of the deep ball. I've got questions about his game. I'll be honest with you. There are questions that concern me a little from, lessons I've learned over the years. Like, I'd like to see him work the middle of the field with more consistency. I'd like to see just didn't feel like they had a lot of concepts to work the middle of the field.
Right.
And I'd also would have liked to see him go through his progressions a little bit more. Those are things I'm going to be in total truth. Those are 2 things at times I think I ignored a couple of years ago on the Justin Fields evaluation. And I was infatuated with him as a prospect. And sort of at times the willingness to escape the pocket, the run first mentality. I worry a little bit, if that carries over the next level with Jaden. I think you could see some of the same mistakes maybe that Justin made in Chicago that sort of brought that tenor to an end. But at the end of the day, he's the most dynamic athlete in the draft at quarterback. The guy ran for like 1,000 yards this year. What was it? 40 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's explosive. The whole playbook is essentially, open to him from an athletic perspective. So I can understand how they arrived at this point. I just personally, I've got Drake May as QB2.
I do too, and it pained me to move him off the spot with Washington, but it just feels that way. So then I think New England's extremely happy to be able to put the card in for Drake May at 3. Justin, we've heard several times from different people on this podcast that he'll need time. Do you buy into that? Because it doesn't feel like, they have Jacoby Brissett. I understand that, but you draft a guy 3, you don't like him sitting. That's just how the league tends to work. How are you on this notion that he's got to sit for a while?
Well, I don't think he necessarily has to sit. I think we've seen, 2 seasons of relatively high-level football at North Carolina. And 2022 was better than 2023. I also thought the supporting cast was better in 2022 than it was this past season. No, I don't think he's raw enough where he has to sit. The lower body stuff, the hero ball at times, that's some stuff that'll get him in trouble. But newsflash, that's still getting Josh Allen in trouble today, right? And the Bills don't care, right? Because the ability to create off script and make the explosive plays, that's what makes him special. And you take the good with the bad. And I see some similarities there with Drake May in terms of, I don't know that he'll ever get some of the boneheaded stuff out of his system, but you won't care if, 75% of the time it leads to the explosives, right? So I don't think he has to sit. I will say I'm certainly concerned, of the supporting cast he'd be inheriting in New England. Certainly, if he's a guy that you want to get some stuff out of his system, it would help to have, I think, better receivers around him than what they have. And certainly the offensive line, I think, could use a little TLC there as well. So I don't think he sits, but I'll admit I don't love the supporting cast there in New England for him to hit the ground running.
I have 4 Arizona staying and taking Marvin Harrison Jr. It feels like they're going to want a lot to get up there. And if most teams realize that they'll take Marvin Harrison, I think then you're just in play for number 5. So it feels like Marvin Harrison Jr. has been a lock to the Cardinals before the season ended.
Yeah, I wouldn't see why. Like, everyone keeps talking about a trade down for them, and I get it because of the general manager, Monty Ossenford, and the way he operates. But they've got 7 picks in the opening 104.
Right.
How many do you need, right? Like, just stay at 4 and take the best player in the draft, arguably, in Marvin Harrison Jr. Their number 1 receiver right now is Michael Wilson, right? Like the sophomore 3rd rounder from last year. Like, I get it, maybe look, if they've got a similar grade on Marvin, on Roma Dunze, Malik Neighbors, a lot of people say they like Neighbors even better. Maybe it makes sense, hey, we'll still get one of our 3 if we go down to 6 or 8 or not, whatever it is. But ultimately, I think I would just stick and pick Marvin Harrison at 4.
You buy all that hype, Adam, that he's the best receiving prospect we've seen. It's funny how many people have said they're not even sure he's the best prospect in this draft. I was surprised when people started talking about that early, like guys like Matt Waldman saying, "Hey, I'm not sure that Marvin Harris is a wide receiver one."
Well, I understand why they're saying it. I don't really. It's crazy for me because as far as like overall rankings, I actually do have Neighbors ranked higher. I think that Harrison, again, you're looking at the next Larry Fitzgerald. I think that's the best comp. But when you're looking at Neighbors, you're looking at Jefferson, you're looking at guys like that, just fleet-footed or just like built for the modern day NFL. Not to say that Harrison's not going to have a great career, but I just look again, it's going to be all about fit with Neighbors. I feel like Harrison can go pretty much anywhere and dominate. I think Neighbors, he's got to be in that right position. But again, I understand why people say it. Aduze just right outside there. I don't have him, in the top two, but I understand why people say it with Harrison and Neighbors because they're two totally different kind of receivers, but both like equally as explosive.
This Chargers pick feels like if anybody's trading, this is the one. I know the Vikings have said that they would prefer not to do this. I get that. In this mock, I've got them shipping 11 and 23 for McCarthy. Justin, tell us what you think about McCarthy because there's two things I'll say. When we started this process after the season ended, I told Adam, if anybody's going to fly up to number one and challenge Caleb Williams, it'll be Daniels just because of the electric season that he had. And that's just how it works with running quarterbacks. They get Heismans and the numbers. Yeah. The other one that I have been super surprised about is J.J. McCarthy. We got told about that fairly early in the process. I think Thor Knight was on like the second episode and said, hey, go back and check J.J. That's right. Yeah. What we can say is it's incredible the winning he's done ever since high school. Like a lot of these guys are winners. This dude's lost like 3 games since he started playing football. It's kind of incredible. Justin, where are you with the J.J. McCarthy hype?
I'm concerned. I'll be honest with you. I see some things with him. I just the lack of high-end traits, I think, is what concerns me. I don't know what he does that's a 10 out of 10. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I know what Caleb Williams does. I know what Jaden Daniels does. I know what Drake May does. I think he's really smart. I think the football IQ is obviously there. I think he's safe. He takes what the defense gives him. But do I see anything that's elite about him? I don't. And when I go back and think of recent first-round quarterbacks that I would have said something similar on, not that they're the same player, but 2 guys that I would have said, I don't know what he does that's a 10 out of 10. I would have said that about Kenny Pickett in 2022, and I would have said that about Mac Jones in 2021, right? And we've seen Mac Jones won a lot of football too, right? Like, we've seen the way that's worked out for both of those guys in those teams. So I've got some pause there. But I think Minnesota, hey, the situation, if that's where he ends up, I'm projecting the same thing, by the way, 11 and 23 for 5. You got what you have at receiver. You've got what you got at tight end. You've got some bookends at tackle. You got better at running back with Aaron Jones, and you've got some pieces on defense. You got a great defensive coordinator. It's the spot for him, for any quarterback, really, right? Any rookie quarterback would appreciate that spot. But for a guy like JJ that I don't think, it's what do they call it? Trailers versus trucks, right? Like, I don't think he's going to carry a team to the promised land, but I can certainly see him having a decent amount of success in a spot like Minnesota.
He has an opportunity to be a more agile Kirk Cousins.
I think that's a fair point. Yeah, I do think that's a fair point. I don't know that he's got the high-end arm talent that I think Kirk Cousins has displayed on occasion. But certainly, look, the record is what it is. They did what they did at Michigan. I understand why teams are high on him. He's firmly quarterback 4 for me. I wouldn't take him ahead of any of the other 3. But again, I think there would be a good chance for instant success there in Minnesota.
Spencer Rattler is QB5 for me.
I like Spencer Rattler. I think he's probably one of the most intriguing second-round quarterbacks, and I would take him in the second, if I don't get my desired target in the first. Like, I think Spencer showed a lot of growth there at South Carolina, a ton of it. And I interviewed him during the whole Senior Bowl thing and really blown away by his maturity. You know what I mean? He's come a long way from that immature kid at Oklahoma that, might have wishes he had a couple do-overs back then, but super mature kid. He's taken a lot of steps forward.
I don't think the Giants can make a move for quarterback with what they're paying Daniel Jones. I have Malik Neighbors here for the Giants.
Yeah,
I can't see
mean,
them. They need another year of at least
they
allowing
have to
Neal
get a big
try.
time.
Right.
Yeah, they can't do that yet. But I do see them. They could be in play for one in the second round. Like we're talking about Rattler. We're talking about any of these other guys. I could definitely see that in the second round.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fun thing for me with the Giants is Darius Slayton last year led the team in receiving yards with 770. That ranked 46th in the league. There were like 12 or 13 teams that had 2 receivers that had more receiving yards, and there were a handful of teams that had 3 receivers that had more receiving yards. So it's very clear what the biggest hole is on this team right now. So no brainer.
They had no juice last year. Let's see. Joe Alt to the Titans seems
No brainer.
like the easiest one we've seen outside of Marvin Harrison at 4. But I think where I start differentiating is I have Byron Murphy coming off the board of the Falcons at 8. I like that play. I know a lot of people have had N for them.
Yeah.
The more we talk to people and the more the game is starting to evolve, D-tackle interior pressure, talk to teams, just as important, if not more important than edge rushers at this point. When you talk about the time that quarterbacks are trying to get the ball out of their hands and then the time it takes for the edge to get there, you're hoping that it takes longer than the average time it takes for the quarterback to get the ball out of his hands. That's why we're moving to this interior pressure. I like Murphy at 8 here. Justin, your thoughts on that?
That's an outstanding point. I'm 50-50 on mocking him or Dallas Turner right now.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be one of those. I could also see it be a slight trade down. Like I could see them going down to like 10. I have a feeling the Jets are going to get aggressive if like Roma Dunze is still on the board, for example, because that's been a potential mock to the Bears at 9. So I could see the Jets getting aggressive, coming up to 8. Falcons move down, still get one of those defenders at 10. But you make a great point about the interior. It's the quickest path to the quarterback, right up the middle, right? So that's self-explanatory. So, but I'm 50-50 right now on Turner or Murphy, but I do think we get the first defensive player here.
I have you mentioned him. It feels like chalk to give Roma Dunze here to the Bears. I also could see Brock Bowers going here. I think this notion that Brock Bowers is a tight end. Yes, he is, but he's going to give it. I mean, just watch him take some of those net sweep motions and outrun everybody on the field. I think he's in play here. I think where Brock Bowers goes will be one of the more interesting things in this draft because I think teams will view him differently.
I do too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, sorry. The one thing I'm going to say is everyone's like, no one wants a tight end, right, in the first round. That's the talk on Bowers. Right. Well, how about this stat? More than 60% of his snaps either as a slot receiver or as a boundary receiver. None of us care when we take a slot receiver in the first round, right? So just think Brock Bowers is that and just take him and shut up because we're talking about a really, really talented football player.
I completely agree. The Jets, again, I think this is pretty much chalk at this point. I have Fuaga going here. The more people we talk to, it sounds like maybe Fashano is in line for a little dip in the draft. I think that will be interesting to see. Justin, you have tackle here at the Jets?
Well, I've either got Roma Dunze or a tackle. That's sort of where I'm split right now. I could see them getting a bit aggressive if they come up. Maybe come up to 8 or 7, for example, if one of those receivers they still like is on the board. They're going to feel a sense of desperation here in their last, potentially last year with Aaron Rodgers. So, but the tackle helps them as well, right? It's very clear. I just think with adding the Cowboys tackle in free agency might give them a bit of a buffer there, but I certainly think it's going to be a tackle or a surprising move up the board for one of the receivers. I don't think it'll be Brock Bowers. I got tackle or receiver.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. That puts us at 11 with the Chargers. I have Brock Bowers coming off the board here at 11 to the Chargers. I think it's interesting with the Chargers to see what will happen with them. You look at the numbers on what Jim Harbaugh wants to do, and they're run heavy. And when I say run heavy, I mean heavy. And you have Justin here. So I'm really interested to see what like this old school, Greg Roman style Jim Harbaugh smashing the face ball is going to look with him out there. But I can see Brock Bowers or a tackle here for sure. At 12, I have the first edge rusher coming off the board of the Broncos with Latu. I don't think the medicals are going to scare people, and I think he's got a little bit more juice than Dallas Turner if we're just talking pure pass rusher. Adam, where do you stand on the pass rush?
I think so too. I think he started I don't know why, but started to pick up steam over the last week or two. That you just see it on social media more and more, and I just think that partly has to do with exactly the medicals have gone through with a fine tooth comb, and I don't think that there's a whole lot of concerns. But we see him not get picked, after 15. I think that's when you can see a legitimate slide for him. But no, I think that in the right scenario, he could have a really good career.
You think it'll be defense here, Justin, or do you think one of the next group of quarterbacks comes off, say a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix Jr.?
Well, I think they've got a couple options. I think they stick and pick defense like you have, or if they want to go Bo Nix or Michael Penix, for example, I think there's a good chance they move back big time.
They trade down.
I've actually, not to ruin my mock too much here, but I've got to trade down with the Eagles. I think the Eagles could get really, really aggressive for one of those corners. You haven't had Terrion Arnold or Quinyon Mitchell yet. So, and if Denver wants to go Bo Nix, no problem. You moved all the way back to 22, I think it is, the Eagles are at. So as of now, I think it's one or two. Either you stick and pick defense at 12 or you move way far back and you go get Bo Nix.
Agree.
I have the first corner, Quinyon Mitchell coming off to the Raiders here at 13. Obviously, the Raiders will also be a spot where maybe a Penix Jr. comes off the board. I like them kicking the can on quarterback and going for the best defensive player available at this point. Justin, your thoughts on that?
Look, it's certainly within the realm of possibility. I could also see them being one of those surprising teams that gets aggressive and tries to trade up. They've got a little capital. They've got maybe enough capital to make it work. If they stick and pick 13 here, though, I do have a slight disagreement with you. I've got a right tackle. You've got some really good ones available there. I mean, Fuaga already went for you. I think in my scenario, Fuaga would still be available here, or a JC Latham if he's available. I think they'll look for a plug-and-play right tackle if they're sticking at 13.
And I was
going to say, I see Mims to them, and them either trying to move back into the first or just staying pat and trying to get one of the quarterbacks. That's what I definitely see.
Justin, there's been a lot of talk about Washington moving back up into the first to try to get into that tackle market before they all fly off the board. Better to give up, say, 36 and 40 and get all the way up to 12 or 13, and then you're looking at the Lathams and the Fashanas of the world, or you're looking at, say, pick 36 and a future pick to get up into the low 20s for the Mims of the world. What do you prefer asset wise?
I don't think they're going to get aggressive enough to come up all the way to 12 or something like that. That's a huge jump.
I agree.
We've seen it, right? I think when the Lions came up for Jameson Williams a few years ago, they came up like 15, 16 spots, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. But ultimately, I think you're probably coming into that like 27 to 30 range. I think teams like the Ravens might candidates to trade back. If the Lions weren't picking at home, I would say they're a great, and maybe they don't care, but I'd say they're a great candidate to trade out of there altogether. I think Washington comes up for maybe a Tyler Guyton. I don't know that Mims is still going to be there. I think Mims is going to go earlier in the early, late teens, early 20s. But I got a guy like Tyler Guyton, maybe a Patrick Paul. I've seen floated around a little bit as well. I think Guy or even a Jordan Morgan, who I like a lot more than I feel the average. I know the arms aren't super long, and that's been the knock on him. But just turn on the tape, watch him against Latu, who we just praised, and I agree with that, by the way. But watch him against Latu. He can play left tackle, in my opinion. I think he's going to be one of those steady guys that just comes in and does his job at a high level right away. So I'd love to see a guy like Jordan Morgan in Washington.
Okay. 15, I have Terrion Arnold from Alabama. I like, it sounds like you think maybe the Eagles are in prime position to trade up to get Terrion Arnold. I've heard that floated around a bunch too, and it makes a ton of sense. You have Terrion Arnold as your QB1 or Mitchell, Justin?
I've got Arnold by the slightest of margins. I mean, I love both of them. I'm a huge fan of both. They're both top 15 on my big board, my overall big board. I just think what Arnold gives you from a technical perspective, he's one of the most technically savvy corners I've seen personally in a very long time. So I'm really, really high on Arnold.
Hard to kind of know what Seattle do as they're like switching identities. I have Dallas Turner coming off the board here. I think he fits kind of, if you think of what Mike McDonald wanted to do with his edges, assuming they run something similar to what they did. There's a lot of juice there off the edge. I can see them liking that there. Do you remember what you had Seattle doing, Justin?
I do. I don't hate the call for an edge, but I've got an interior lineman. I think it's going to be like a Troy Fatanu from Washington.
Yeah, okay.
Worth noting, they've got some ties there, right? They've got some coaching staff ties to Washington. I think the new offensive coordinator was with the Huskies last year. So, they've got a need at like both guard spots, or in my opinion, there in Seattle. So I could see Fatanu or even a Graham Barton. That might be a little early for him, but I'm super high on Graham Barton. So I've got either Barton or Fatanu. And if not, I think the edge rusher's a decent chance as well.
At 17, I have the Jaguars taking Jared Verse. I like Jared Verse a lot.
I like him a lot too. I've got him going with the corner. I've got either Quinyon Mitchell or Terrion Arnold in this scenario. I think they need a guy to play opposite Tyson Campbell. They've got some stuff alongside the edge. They brought in Eric Armstead. They've obviously, Trayvon Walker. They signed Josh Allen to that extension. When I look at that defense, bringing in defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen, corners have been so big for him throughout his time in the league, right? Like having Marshawn Lattimore in New Orleans, then having AJ Terrell this past season in Atlanta. I don't think he's going to be thrilled with what they've got at corner opposite. I remember they cut ties with Darius Williams earlier this offseason, the corner that started opposite Campbell last year. So I've got one of the corners here.
This may just be me hoping, but I have Washington trading up for Fashanu here, who, again, we've had several people tell us that he may be one of these guys that takes a dip. The run blocking, not very good, but the tools in the pass blocking, incredible. I'm not sure what it would take. I think I would give up 36 and 40 to do something like that, knowing that they still have the 2/3 and you could still pick up a wide receiver or a tight end or whatever you like there. I have Mims coming off next to the Rams, who I think are in need of a tackle. What other positions do you like for them there, Justin?
I potentially, I'm glad you say that because I haven't done it in my mock, but I'm thinking of changing it because it feels like Sean McVay might take an offensive player. I don't know that he can help himself with his first round pick and God knows how long. So a lot of people got tackle receiver. Right now, I got one of those edge guys. I got either Jared Verse or Latu. Obviously losing Aaron Donald in the interior is a huge blow. They've got some young pieces on the edges. I thought Byron Young played well for them last year, but they're going to need more up front. So whether that's an interior guy like a Johnny Newton or a Byron Murphy if he's still around, or one of the edges if it's not offense, I imagine it's going to be a D lineman.
I have this. The next is the Steelers. I have them taking Latham here. Tackle of some sort feels like play here. Allows them to get Broderick Jones back over to left tackle, which I think he's probably better suited for. Was nice for them to be able to get him out and get some experience last year, though. I have the Dolphins taking the D tackles or have Newton here. What do you like for the Miami here, Justin?
This is one of the hardest teams I had. I had a tough time, right? I think they signed a bunch of D tackles in free agency, but none of them are Christian Wilkins, right? Like that's a huge blow up front. So as of now, I got one of the interiors. I think I got Murphy going quite a bit earlier than this, but if he's around still, that's a no-brainer. And if Johnny Newton is around, which I think he will be, that's what I'm going with as of right now is Johnny Newton from Illinois.
Yep, we had the same thing then. Let's see, the Eagles, without the trade up that you mentioned, I have them taking Kool-Aid McKinstry here. I think they got to get out of this job with a corner.
Yeah. Agreed. Corner, right? Whether they're moving up or sticking there, it's got to be best corner available.
I think so. Chargers have their second pick at 23. You mentioned him earlier. I like Graham Barton here. Who I am super high on, as you are, Justin. I think can play all 5 spots. I've been told he may be the best center in the whole draft.
You're right. I've been told the same thing. I think he can play center in a pinch. It's interesting to hear your 2 picks for them because I've got a total different approach for them at 11 and 23. And I love hearing the different scenarios. I really do. I've got them going right tackle at 11, like a JC Latham or a Talis Fuaga. There's been so much smoke connecting them to a tackle. If they really want one, I don't see why they would take Joe Alt at 5. They've got Rashawn Slater on the left. I don't love the idea of taking Alt and switching sides. So I think you trade down to 11 and 23 if you really want to tackle. You take one of those right tackles at 11, Latham or Fuaga, and then at 23, I mean, we need a receiver, right? Like I mean, come on,
Yes.
cutting ties with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. It's pretty grim for Justin Herbert right now. So I think I've got Brian Thomas Jr. in this spot here at 23.
That would make a ton of sense. Coming off next for the Cowboys, I have Adonai Mitchell here. Speed kills. Generally, Jerry gets hung up on traits. I think he'll love the idea of being able to add a receiver, not knowing exactly what may happen soon. What do you like for the Cowboys here?
Well, I look at the two vacant spots on the O-line, right? Like assuming Tyler Smith, I think, is kicking out to left tackle. I don't know who's playing left guard, and I don't know who's playing center, right? So if you don't mind the value, and I actually have them trading down and taking an interior guy, like if Graham Barton is there, or even maybe a Jackson Powers Johnson. I've actually got to trade with the Chiefs here. So I've got the Cowboys getting the last pick of the first round, and kind of helps. Remember when they did that with Travis Frederick? I'm going to show my age way back when, where they wanted the center. They knew the value, so they moved down twice, and they took Frederick, one of the last picks of the first round. So I got an interior guy if they move down. If they stick here, whatever the tackle, the best tackle available, whether that's Mims or Fatanu, I think one of them will probably still be here at 24 potentially. I mean, a tackle or a guard really makes the most sense.
Cooper DeJean from Iowa feels like a Green Bay Packer type of DB. I've got him slotted here, a guy that can move all over the place. You see him as a first rounder, right, Adam?
Yeah, I think back into the first round, and he definitely has the ceiling to play corner in the pinch if you need him. But yeah, he's definitely safety on the next level.
I have Tampa Bay taking Jackson Power Johnson next, who is another guy that I've heard maybe was higher. Like, I think the Senior Bowl gave him a huge bump, and it feels like maybe he's come back down to earth a little bit. Is that how you see it, Justin?
It's always tough with centers, right? With the positional value thing, like it's like the Brock Bowers conversation almost, right? Not quite on that level, but not a lot of first-round centers, generally speaking. So that's why I had the Cowboys taking him at 32, like through a trade down to the very last pick. I've got the Bucs going with an edge guy here, the best one available. I think I've got Latu in my mock personally, but I think Chop Robinson would be an option here as well.
Okay. I know you got to run. We'll run through some of these quickly. The Cardinals, I have Nate Wiggins here.
I've got the same.
Yep.
Let's see. Buffalo, I've got Brian Thomas Jr. here. I know you had mentioned him a little earlier. Feels like Buffalo's got to get a receiver here, right? There's plenty of them in that area.
I've got Xavier Worthy because I've got the same thought. I mean, they need to get one of these Texas receivers. I think would be a fair thing to say.
I've got the Detroit Lions again, just lucking out here.
Yeah,
Chop Robinson on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson feels nasty and unfair, but that's why I have here. Or like a Darius Robinson, whoever they prefer.
I've got Darius Robinson in this spot. I think they're going to love that toughness, the size. It looks like a Dan Campbell guy, doesn't he? Like built in a lab. I think they'll appreciate that inside-outside versatility. Yeah. But most importantly, it's getting someone to play opposite Aiden Hutchinson.
That's right.
I've got the Ravens taking Ladd McConkey here. I don't see a way that Ladd gets out of the first. My Georgia homerism aside, Ladd's nasty and he's ready to start working right now. You pair him back with the former OC from Georgia, and I think Lamar is going to be super excited to have Ladd McConkey on the team.
I like that fit a lot, certainly. That's an interesting one. That's not one I've seen a lot of. I'm with you on Ladd in terms of I love what he gives you right away. The route running prowess is unbelievable. I've got a tackle here, interestingly enough. I think I've got Jordan Morgan, who could also play guard.
Yeah. And that wouldn't surprise me at all either. I had the corner from Michigan going to the 49ers, Mike Sandstrom. I'm probably butchering that. But I could also see a tackle going here too.
Yeah, I'm going to go really bold. This might be the boldest pick in my mock, and I'm probably going to make me look stupid, and that's fine. It is what it is. I've got the tackle from Washington, Roger Rosengarten. I think we always get a surprise.
I love him.
We always get a surprise in the first round. When I look, they didn't really address that right tackle spot since Mike McGlinchey left. It's a bit of a sore spot for them on the right side. I look at what Kyle Shanahan likes in his linemen. We know he runs that zone-based system. I look at how athletic this kid ran, the fastest 40 of any lineman at the a 4.92. And I know, we're talking about 40s and linemen, but that sort of captures how athletic he is. So I think he's a great fit for that Shanahan system. There's no doubt about what position he'll play at the next level. It's right tackle. So I'm going to go really bold here and pull a surprise. I got Roger Rosengarten here.
I love that one, Adam. We've talked about him a bunch throughout the season here, and he's skyrocketed forward. And people have to remember that. I mean, he was the blindside protector.
That's right.
In that offense, right? I mean, that was his job. And in a league where we're getting more and more pass rushers deep along both sides, that right tackle spot has become just as important as the left tackle spot in my mind. I love that. I round out the Chiefs with Polk. I could see if Lad McConkey's here, I could see them doing that, but it feels like another receiver. There's some other ways they could go, Justin, if they don't.
Well, I've got them trading up for a receiver. You know, it's funny. I look at them at 32. I look at what's become their arch nemesis at 28, the Bills, right? Like, are they going to let the Bills get a receiver before they do? I think one of these teams is going to get really aggressive, right? So as of now, I've got it being the Chiefs coming up, trying to jump Buffalo. That's the trade I've got with Dallas. I've got the Chiefs coming up to 24 to make sure they jump a couple spots in front of Buffalo. If they do go at another position, first of all, I think they're going receiver. Before the Rashee Rice off-field thing, I thought there was a chance they would ignore receiver in the first year. But I don't see how the heck you do that now with the uncertainty surrounding Rashee Rice. But tackle, like, no one's talking about who's playing tackle for them this year. Like, they didn't re-sign Donovan Smith yet, I believe. They've got some they've got questions on at least one of those spots. So I know they got the high price contract on the other side there, and they gave him a ton of money, so he's not going anywhere. But who's playing left tackle? Like, if they don't take a receiver, I think left tackle, you name them, right? All the ones that we've run through, if any of them are available here, I think that would probably be the alternative to a receiver.
Adam, we made it through another season of the Draft on Tap. Justin, this was an incredible
Pleasure,
way to round it out, and we appreciate it. Obviously, a busy man.
The pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much for having me on, Doug. I know we've been talking about this for a while, so I'm so happy we finally got to get it done. I had a blast. Adam, thank you so much for having me as well. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we've made it. Feels like Christmas Eve today. I can't wait. It's the calm before the storm, but I am beyond excited to finally see. It's been a year-long work, essentially, for me and all of us over at the Draft Network. So we are so excited to see sort of our hard work come to fruition this weekend, and we're ready to analyze it all. So big weekend for us, and we thank you guys for all your support.
Thank you, buddy, and enjoy the barbecue on Monday.
That's the plan. Thanks, guys, and good luck.
Thank you.
Same to you, bro.